first question goes that what actually got you into metal music at first?
At first I actually loved hearing metal bands on the radio when I was a kid, because it was a different time, before the internet and everything. So the only metal I got to hear originally was on the radio, and I always gravitated towards the more aggressive music. It felt like I had an outlet that way. And then growing up in Southern California, San Diego area specifically, punk was a really big thing here. And so I got into punk music a lot when I was in high school. But then when I started to learn guitar around the age of 18, I got more interested in metal because it was a lot more fun to play on guitar.
Okay. So what got you into metal bands? Were there like some specific bands which you sort of like looked up to, and how did that happen?
Of course I always, was a fan of metal and aggressive sounds. And then the earliest bands that I was in, I was actually a bass player, and
Yeah.
like they were like metal punk kind of crossover type, like hardcore bands. And we were always trying to record ourselves, and every time we got to doing the vocals, we realized, oh, this vocalist that we hired our friend wasn't a really good fit. And sometimes you don't realize that until you start recording, right? So you can hear it under a microscope. And then eventually I got to the point where I said, well, let me just give it a try. I don't think I'm an amazing vocalist by any means, but I think I could do better than the guy we just recorded, right? So that's how I started vocals and moved from bass into vocals. And so my mindset has always been like a songwriter, like an instrument guy, like a guitar player. I play guitar in a few bands as well, but I did the vocals out of necessity because we could never find somebody. And then of course I try to develop that over time, because if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well.
So was Against the Mark like your first proper band that you started singing in?
Yeah, it was a band I was in high school, but it was just like I think we only played 1 or 2 concerts, but like a lot of people in high school, their high school bands are not very good, but it gives them enough experience to learn and to know what it's like to put a band together.
But about that band, were you like playing your own stuff, or was it more like a cover band that you did some specific covers?
No, it was we wrote our own stuff, and I actually learned guitar from the guitar player of that band. So he's the one that taught me. I credit my ability to be a songwriter to him.
So when you started doing like more like metal type of vocals, was it like some specific covers that you played, or are you the person that you sort of started like immediately doing your own stuff and pushing your own like influence to the songs itself?
Yeah, I pretty much immediately started doing my own songs because, like I said, I had been writing songs for other vocalists to sing, and so I had a backlog of songs to try vocals on already.
So were there like some specific vocalists that you looked up to when you started screaming yourself?
Yeah, I think at the time, I listened to a lot of underground music. So people that influenced me back then aren't really people that, are very successful, but the genre itself was relatively new. And so I just liked the emotion of, I remember hearing this band called Training for Utopia, which is the singer of Demon Hunter now, but back then he was kind of going for this like kind of like this sound where he's just like really almost like he's losing his mind, like he's just really letting it out. You could hear the like panic in his voice, and I thought, wow, like that sounds really raw. I don't know how to get my voice to do that. And so I think that like really just hearing that really influenced me, even though I wasn't like a huge fan of the band. I did like the band, but I just particularly loved like the emotion conveyed in his vocals. So that kind of pushed me from more of like the grunty hardcore type sound to like more of the like really that unhinged, like I don't know how to describe it, more of a scream. That was probably a big influence for me. My favorite band in high school, one of them was Living Sacrifice.
Okay.
Which I don't think vocally I sound a lot alike, but he's definitely influenced me, and their rhythmic songwriting has influenced me a lot.
So did it take for you like a long time to figure out the right technique for the screaming so you won't lose your voice? How was it with the early days?
So the genre didn't really exist like it does now. So back then, I just assumed that you do lose your voice. Like I didn't know there was healthy ways to do this kind of vocal. So I just went for it, and I did lose my voice a bunch of times, and then eventually, I think your voice, like just like training at the gym, if you go to the gym and you get really sore or you almost hurt yourself and you go back, your body will eventually learn ways to protect itself. And so, in the early days of metalcore, that's how it happened. There wasn't like formal training like we have now and technique, and which is also why I think that certain vocalists from the early points of the genre, for better or worse, they may not sound incredible, but they all sound like themselves, right? Because they're not utilizing a technique to try to mimic something that already exists. And now we have a very technique-oriented metal vocal that's out there, and I think that's great because I think it's expanded the genre. But you also get people that are so reliant on technique that you can barely hear their real voice anymore.
So when you started touring with SLA Dying More and playing like proper tours, how was it like vocal-wise for you? Were you sort of already ready and had the stamina to do the shows, or was it like a struggle for you to do like long tours and play like show after show after show?
Yeah, it was a struggle because we typically had done a few weekends like in a row, where we do 3 shows and then come home and then go out for the next weekend and do 3 shows. And, those were a little bit difficult. So the first time we did a full tour, I remember specifically after the second show of the tour being like, uh-oh, I think I might be losing my voice. And then like the body steps in and figures out ways to protect itself. And now it's not something I worry about, but I wouldn't say that I necessarily think a lot about technique now, but I think that just so ingrained in me from 20 something years of doing it.
So did you have some kind of like warm-up routines back then, and how have those like changed through the years? Do you nowadays warm up before the shows?
Yeah, I warm up a little bit. Speaking of that, I just woke up. I should have warmed up before I jumped on the Zoom call. But no, I typically just make sure I'm not groggy from the previous day, and sort of like massage the vocal cords a little bit, like with different sounds. But I think that a lot of vocalists I've toured with really overthink it, and they get in their heads and they start to worry, and that stress and anxiety to me actually hinders performance, I think, a lot of times more than just accepting that the human voice is a little bit inconsistent. Some nights you're going to sound incredible, and other nights you just kind of get through it.
So are there like some specific foods or drinks that you wouldn't rather have before the show that you have felt that they affect, for example, your vocal cords somehow?
Well, I learned that when it comes to food and drinks, it's got to actually get into your bloodstream, and like hydrating your voice as an example. Like if you if you have something kind of like you're coughing or something, and you need to take a drink to sort of like make sure that you feel okay, that's one thing. But if you want to feel your vocal cords like hydrated, it's really what you drank like 5 hours earlier that's going to be in your bloodstream and actually hydrating your vocals from within. And in terms of like food and energy, it's it's what's already passed through your digestive tract and what's fueling your body from within. So within an hour or so of going on stage, I don't think there's really a lot that can be done. But I think that throughout the day, if you're staying hydrated and having healthy fuel sources, like for me, I try to eat a lot because of weightlifting and stuff. So I generally have like plenty of fuel in my body.
So do you feel that the weightlifting has sort of helped you with the singing and screaming?
Interestingly enough, I think that they're kind of just different. The vocal cords are really not like they need stamina like a muscle would, if you were running long distances. But it's not really related to like I think the physical part of the body. Although screaming as a whole, is very physical. You see a lot of singers that use similar technique that I do. They use they're really pushing loud and hard, and so I think that I'm able to not feel as worn out afterwards. But in terms of the voice itself, I think it's pretty separate from the weightlifting part.
As you said, like that vocal cords are a muscle, and when you had that time in jail, how was it like you when it comes to like singing? Were you still like practicing and singing all the time, or were you just like writing music and forgetting like few years for the singing and screaming, or how was that time period for you?
Yeah, no, I didn't do any kind of vocal any significance during that few years. Really, Yeah, I mean, almost 4-year period of time. And, you know, when I wanted to do My Own Grave again, I had to get my voice in shape. But My Own Grave wasn't the first thing that I recorded. I had done like a lot of demos leading up into that. So, you know, I felt good when we did My Own Grave. But yeah, I remember the first time when I got out and I wanted to work on a demo, because I had written songs while I was gone and had plenty of demo ideas. And then the first time I did it, I got like about 4 lines into the song and realized, okay, that's all the stamina my body has right now. And those 4 lines sounded good, but everything after that, you know, needed a rest. And so I had to come back a couple days later, and I would just do things like, you know, 4 lines at a time. And eventually that stamina increased, and then I was able to do full songs again.
Okay, but it took some time to sort of get back to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So obviously you have released a lot of albums with As I Lay Dying, and also albums with Austrian Death Machine, for example. Are there like some specific albums that you could pinpoint, for example, that you have felt that you have taken a step as a vocalist?
I remember specifically doing the first Austrian Death Machine record, and I just kind of did what I wanted to do. I wasn't trying to fit like a sound, you know, like with As I Lay Dying, you know, we always have a very intense sound, and there's not really a lot of vocal variation on the early albums. And then when I did the first Austrian Death Machine album, you know, just kind of just did whatever I felt like for the part. And I remember a lot of my friends saying, "Oh, like you do a lot of cool stuff here." You know, I like, some people say, "Hey, I like your voice on that record more than they did on An Ocean Between Us," as an example. And I never really thought about it, you know, and I said, "Oh, well, you know, this stuff is all pretty easy for me." You know, some of the, you know, I know I did some really high vocals and more yelly vocals, just a little bit of variation. And it wasn't like anything groundbreaking, but it just kind of made me realize, okay, like, you know, I can apply this to future albums. And I think that after that, oddly enough, even though that was an album done for fun, I think it actually helped me get better as a vocalist.
So you feel that those sort of like side projects has been like very helpful for you, because you could try out like a lot of things that you wouldn't want to maybe try with As I Lay Dying.
Yeah, or sometimes just it fits that part of the song. I try to write for what fits the song best, right? And if the song is just a little bit different than what As I Lay Dying would do, then I can vocally do something just a tiny bit different. So yeah, I think they definitely helped me develop.
So the next big step for you is obviously releasing the Born Through Fire album, Purify and Refine, which will be out on April 7th. So were there like some new things that you tried out with the vocals for this upcoming album?
For Born Through Fire, I really try to write the vocal that best fits the part. There is some stuff different. You know, I do, I guess, what we call in our day and time like a clean vocal. You know, I do that at times, or I blend it with other vocalists because I write a melody I like, and my voice is naturally more of a baritone. I can sing into a tenor range, but because I'm naturally more of a baritone, I sometimes will co-write with like more of a traditional tenor vocalist, but with Born Through Fire, we don't have like a second, you know, singer type. Like with As I Lay Dying, you know, we have Ryan Neff playing bass and singing on our new album, right? And so to me, like when there's an opportunity for a great melody, it's like, well, he's incredible at this, like let me let him do this. With Born Through Fire, Joey and I songwrite together, and if I have an idea, I'm not relying on somebody else to try it. I'll try it first, and then of course we have guest vocalists from time to time, but I think that expanded me a little bit, and then I just try to write the part that best fits the song. So if it's a heavier song, I might do a little bit more of like a deathcore type feel at times.
So the album is titled Purify and Refine. So is there like a deeper meaning behind it?
Well, yeah, the Purify and Refine is you know, to me, it's like when you go through a trial or a struggle, and you have that moment where, you know, you endure pain. That pain sort of like, you know, almost kind of like when you're burned as a person, it's sort of like, you know, takes off what your body doesn't really, you know, I don't know how I'm trying to describe it. You know, like if you were refining a piece of jewelry, right? And you wanted to break down that metal into, you know, just pure gold again, right? You'd have to put it through a fire, and then whatever's strong would survive that situation. And so it's kind of that whole purifying and refining of ourselves, and whatever's strong survives that process.
So did you had like a vision in your mind where you wanted to go with the band musically, because the album is like very diverse?
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is that we just wanted to write good songs. Joey and I had been friends for so long, and we both respect each other a lot as engineers and producers, and we both can self-produce or you know, work on our own albums. And so we just wanted to get together and just have fun with it and take a song wherever it went. And if it was a little bit more on the melodic side, we just took it there. And if we wanted to have a really heavy identity, we just took it there too. And so I think the identity of the band will develop over time, but the diversity just comes from just trying to write good songs and not worrying about fitting into, like, you know, deathcore or metalcore, like whatever it is. And I'm sure because it's me, it's always going to have a little bit of my sound to it, right? And people say, oh, it's a metalcore record, right? But I do think that a lot of younger bands, you know, they really write so much concerned about identity that we forget about just good songs are classic regardless of the subgenre.
So what I liked a lot about the album, once again, like most of the stuff that you have done, is the articulation on the songs. It's like when you are screaming, you can definitely hear what you are screaming. So how important is that for you?
It's something I've gotten better at over the years, because the genre was so young when I first started. You know, there were bands like Converge that were, you know, a handful of years before us, and I remember listening to their records and being like, well, I don't think he even wants you to understand what he's saying, right? And that was kind of like the I guess that's the early roots of the genre, right? Is the vocals almost more like a additional layer, like a synth would be on top of a, you know, on top of a metal song, right? Yeah. And so I just went with the mentality of that in the early days, and then as the genre progressed, I realized, like, you know, I could be just as aggressive, but get a little more articulation. I've just consciously worked on it over the years. I think that there's an interesting conversation I had in the early years of, like, the metalcore genre with a couple vocalists saying that, you know, if I try to sound, if I try to enunciate my words really well, it doesn't sound as aggressive. And my main emphasis at that time, along with those other vocalists, was to just, you know, have a certain style of scream or growl that it was like the sound we were going for, we weren't so concerned about the lyrics and all that. I mean, we wrote lyrics and we cared about them, but we weren't concerned about, like, people being able to understand the words. And it takes a little more talent to have that similar aggression, but also articulation.
So I want to know that what were your parents' reactions when you joined your first metal band and started playing metal? If I have understood correctly, you have had quite, like, sort of like religious backgrounds.
Yeah, so my parents were pretty supportive of it. I think to them, and even to myself, it felt like a hobby, and the music itself, you know, was a good outlet. I don't think anybody anticipated being able to play music as heavy as I've written over these years and make a living out of that, you know. And so we all, myself included, thought, we'll do this, you know, for fun, and then I'll keep going to school, and eventually, you know, I won't be able to do this anymore, and I'll you'll get like a normal job, I guess you'd say, right? You know, and then that just never happened. So they've been incredibly supportive of the whole journey. Something meaningful like that, because I feel like I'm exchanging ideas and I'm growing at the same time as I'm helping other people grow. That's very fulfilling work. So I probably picture myself there if I wasn't screaming as a vocalist.
So there's obviously a lot of people who admire you as a singer. So are there, like, any kind of advice that you would like to give to a young metal vocalist who is just about to start the journey? Anything that pops up into your mind?
Well, the whole metal community as a whole is much more saturated. I mean, there's more music out than there's ever been. You know, artists can self-release onto Spotify now, or upload their own music videos on YouTube, and so it's a different environment now, where I feel like, as a vocalist, if you don't pair yourself with an excellent songwriter or become an excellent songwriter yourself, it really doesn't matter how incredible your vocals are, because there's hundreds of incredible vocalists out there that have, you know, good technique. And now there's different vocal institutes and people that are teaching technique in a way that I feel like the talent of vocalists will continue to expand, you know, because of these resources. But songwriting, to me, is the most classic thing that there is, you know. And so even the best songwriters in the world, they need an incredible guitar player to write with. And so that's with As the Dying as an example. That's where I really appreciate working with Phil. Is that while I am also a songwriter and I do play guitar as well, the songwriting gets pushed, you know, to quite a different level than I would ever be able to take it working with Phil. And you know, I think that young vocalists out there, make sure to find their version of Phil, or in the case of Born Through Fire, Joey and I, you know, I think we're an incredible team. And you know, it's a much newer thing, right? Because Phil and I have been writing songs for 20 years, and Joey and I have been are about to release our first full length album, you know. So, but that type of arrangement to me is really important.
So before we wrap things up, I want to ask you a bit about the future. So what does it hold? Will you plan on like playing shows also with this new band, and As I Lay Dying is probably making a new album now, and what kind of like actual plans do you have in the scope now?
So I'm just, you know, we're about to release the Born Through Fire record. It'll take some time for people to be familiar with the songs, you know. So we couldn't play live shows if we wanted to right now because we only have 3 songs that exist out in the world, right?
Yeah.
Very short set. So we're gonna give it some time, and I think we'll kind of reevaluate that idea once the music's circulated a little bit. And as it relates to As I Lay Dying, it's nice to be back in the studio, and the way things work, especially with vinyl manufacturing and lead times, is even though we're in the studio now, it doesn't mean we're going to have a record out, you know, next month or anything like that. So there'll be a good separation between the two. You know, and it's exciting time for me because I love creating music more than I do touring personally, but I love them both, and so I look forward to getting on the road whenever I'm done with all these new songs.
What's the situation with Austrian Death Machine at the moment?
That one's interesting because I have a lot of ideas. I have you know, an EP or a full length, or however, you know, depends, I guess, once I refine it, how many songs I have. But I think the timing is really hard there because I want to find a way to do that where it's fun and lighthearted, but it doesn't step on the toes of anything, you know, going on with As I Lay Dying. And also, I think when I was first released from incarceration, I think that, you know, to do anything Austrian Death Machine related within a handful of years of all that, I think, you know, even though I think it's okay to have a sense of humor and to laugh again and to be myself again, you know, I feel like you know, to just like go from such a serious situation where to me expressing my remorse was the most important thing, to like be making jokes right away, I think, you know, just wouldn't come across properly. So I've waited specifically you know, for what I feel like is an appropriate time to you know, I think people know the path that I'm on now, and I feel like it's okay to do stuff like that now, but I don't think it was for a handful of years.
Hey, thanks a lot, Tim, for the chat, and
yeah,
all the best for the future. Anything you want to say as last words to all the fans?
Well, I know the timing of this is you know, really close to the Born Through Fire album release, and so you know, I'm excited to have that outlet that represents to me not just the music itself, but the friendship I have with Joey, going through all those really tough years together as friends. And you know, it was really good to have a friend who cared both to enjoy writing with me, because that's a passion of mine, but then also just be there for me as a friend through some of the most difficult times of my life. So that album just means a lot to me on a personal level.
And it's an amazing album, so I also highly recommend everyone to check it out.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot for this, and hope to catch you in Finland someday again with either one of your bands. Come back.
Yeah, it's good to see you after all these years.
Yeah, for sure. But I hope to catch you here again with some of the bands.
I'm sure we'll be back in Finland. Yeah.
Hey, thank you a lot for taking the time to do this.
Thank you too.